PSExec. We're going to be covering this tool in today's video. This was a video request that I got from one of my viewers, and definitely if you guys watch the channel and you have any questions, things you'd like covered, let me know down in the comments section below. It really helps me figure out what content that is going to be, the most in demand from you guys, right? And so, if this sounds interesting to you, then stay tuned. Hey, what's up, guys? Let's get right into it with PSExec. Now, what is this tool, first and foremost? Well, this is more of an administration tool that, in the same way that SSH is often an administrative tool, right? The purpose of SSH is to log on to a Linux server, normally Linux, can run on Windows sometimes, but for the most part, to remote into, securely remote into a Windows or a Linux server and perform some administrative tasks remotely on that server without having to actually plug into it with a physical cable as you had to do back in the day, right? And so, or the serial port cables, if you're familiar with any of those networking devices back in the day where they would have to, connect via serial cable. Maybe you've played around with Raspberry Pi in the past and you might have done that yourself. But, with PSExec, it's basically, it kind of stands for, I think, process execute, or maybe PowerShell execute. I'm not sure. I think process. I'm leaning towards process. But basically, it allows you to execute, PowerShell commands or, whatever commands on a Windows server to remotely administer the Windows server, right? That's normally how, your administrators would interface remotely if they just want a command line shell. Maybe they don't want the full-blown RDP session. They just need some command line access, right? So basically, that is what we're going to be using here. We can use that as an attacker to, of course, same with SSH, right? Run enumeration and try to elevate our privileges, right? We'll have an initial shell, right? We'll have a way that we can run shells on the remote system. So obviously, it is extremely lucrative as an attacker if we can do that. But similar to SSH, with that in mind, we will need credentials in order to run this. But the cool thing about Windows, actually, is we don't necessarily have to have a password because of the way that Kerberos authentication works. If we have a hash, we are often able to pass the hash, do a pass the hash attack, and that is something you can pretty simply do with PSExec, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. But the first case I'm going to show to you guys is we have, our standard credentials, username and password, and we want to use those to remote on the system so that we can have a session and run commands and look for privilege escalation and all that good stuff, right? If we want to do that, then first of all, we need to locate PSExec on our Kali box. Nice thing is, I believe this is pre-installed with the current version of Kali Linux nowadays. It didn't used to be, I don't think, but it's part of the Impacket suite of tools, which are very good tools, by the way. But this is the one you're looking for here. So if I run Python on that and do -h, and it looks like it's probably a Python 3, in fact. So let's try it with that. And yeah, now we see the help menu come up just fine. But the commands, or the flags that we're going to need for this, essentially, and before I get into that, I have some credentials here. This is credentials to one of the Hack the Box, the active Hack the Box, if you guys ever done that one. These are the administrator credentials that I gathered through some prior steps. So however you go about collecting your credentials, as long as you have valid credentials on the machine, you can remote into the system. So then if we wanted to log into the server with these credentials using PSExec, the way we would do that is pretty much the syntax is very similar to SSH. But if you didn't know, you could look into the help function. It'll show you what the parameters are, what it expects, right? But run this with Python 3, and this file here is part of the Impacket suite. And we'll do administrator at 10, 10, 10, 100. And then it should prompt us for the password. I'm just going to copy and paste it in this case. And now you see it's requesting, writing, uploading. So this is going to work over port 445, right? It's going to log in over SMB. That's something I didn't mention earlier that I probably should have mentioned. So it's actually using a writable admin share here in order to log in and give you code execution that way. And that's how we have our shell. Right? So we see in this case, we're the administrator, we're the highest level of privilege on this Windows box. We basically rooted it upon having those credentials. So that is the case when you do have credentials. Now, going back to the other scenario you could have is you could have a hash, but you don't have the password, you just have the password's hash. And you want to do a pass the hash attack, something you probably heard about before. And so the way that you would basically do that, I'll kind of write it out here for you guys so you can see. Let's find PSExec here really quick again. There's also a Metasploit module, PSExec, as well, in case you guys are interested in that. I know a lot of people love Metasploit in the OSCP realm. Not really, right? But it is a really good tool when you're doing real world stuff, I'll say. But the way you would pass the hash is, kind of similar, pretty similar to the other one. Let's say we had an administrator hash in this case at some IP address. The only difference is we'll say hashes to denote that it's a hash. And then we would just type in our NTLM hash or whatever hash, right? We would provide the hash here. This is just a placeholder, right? And so running this is how we could actually try to authenticate with Kerberos via pass the hash attack. And so one little bonus I want to give you guys as well, if you watched to this point in the video, is when you have credentials, there's another tool that I really like to use. It's called Evil WinRM, and it actually uses the Windows remote management protocol in order to authenticate. It gives you a really nice shell. That's the advantage of using Evil WinRM over, say, like a PSExec. You normally get a really solid shell, but it's not always something that you're able to do. I believe if they have it so that Windows remote management is disabled, then I don't think you're going to be able to typically use this tool. But in most cases, I've been been successful with using this when I had credentials. So let me try this on this. I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. I didn't test this beforehand, but you could run it. We'll just run it with a -H flag so we can see what our options are. I can go ahead and close out of this as well. And this is basically what it expects, right? We supply it with an IP address, username, and password. So simple enough. Let's go ahead and try that. So to do that on this box, it's a Ruby script, by the way. So we'll say Ruby evilwinrm.rb and we'll give it the IP address. And then for the user, we had administrator. And then for the password, we had this thing up here. We'll just encase it and, oops, I did not copy for some reason. And yeah, this should be the only information we need. It'll automatically try the Windows remote management ports, I believe, like some pretty high port. It's like 5,000 something. But I'm not 100% this is going to work here. On a lot of the boxes it does, but this is taking a second, so I'm thinking that maybe it's going to have some issues here, right? And so maybe if we try like 445, I don't think that's going to work. You probably need to supply it with one of the remote management ports. I think in this case, this box just doesn't have it enabled. But definitely something to try, because if you can get this shell, then it's just a all-around better shell to have, in my opinion, at least. So, but yeah, there you have it pretty much. It looks like this tool isn't going to work in this scenario, but something I wanted to bring to your attention as an alternative to PSExec in some cases. So hopefully this video was of help to you. If you watched it to this point, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video as well to help get this out there. And yeah, if you want to learn more about this, what you need to know for OSCP, go ahead and check out the videos on screen now. And I will see you guys right over there. Thanks for watching.